When it comes to games that define the Sega Saturn, there's certainly a number of contenders. Not least because in the absence of a mainline Sonic game, the console was left without a true mascot. Nights into Dreams is often a game touted to fill that void for a number of reasons. Virtua Fighter 2, as the console's best-selling game and its early visual benchmark, is another. Sega Rally could define the Sega Saturn for obvious reasons, while Panzer Dragoon and its sequels define the Saturn with a trilogy that was not only well received at the time, but in totality remains exclusive to the system today. All of these and so many more could be in the position to be the game that defined the Sega Saturn. But there's an alternative that I'd like to offer up. A game that utilised the Sega Saturn's unique strengths. A game that exemplifies the sort of unique creativity that Sega exuded in that era. That flaunted the 2D prowess the Saturn would be renowned for and would remain exclusive to the console in the West. Fellow Sega fans, that game is Dragon Force. The tale of Dragon Force begins with another force, that of J-Force, an offshoot of the iconic
Game creative style. Wolf Team.
This small but talented team had been established by Masahiro Akishiro, the producer behind some of Wolf Team's biggest hits, such as the El Viento trilogy, Cobra Command, Soul Feast and Road Adventure. Between 1994 and 1995, they produced 5 games that represented quite an eclectic mix from puzzle games to visually impressive RPGs, and with the advent of the 32-bit era, they began work on perhaps their most ambitious game yet. Built for the brand new Sega Saturn console with its unprecedented power for 2D visuals, this game would blend numerous genres together in a new and innovative way. But then, disaster struck. J-Force, beset by project delays and financial problems, saw their figurehead, Masahiro Akishiro, disappear. His whereabouts remain a mystery to this day, and with their most important and influential designer, not to mention the company's figurehead, now missing, J-Force would fall into bankruptcy and their remaining projects would be scattered to the winds. Thankfully, Sega saw the potential of Dragon Force and would pick up where J-Force left off, pulling a team of experienced Sega alumni together, featuring the likes of Hiroshi Oba, who worked on Mystaria, Takashi Hashimoto, who was the planner for Blue Seed, Masahiro Senpai, who worked on a bunch of classics like Sonic CD and Astol, Tomoyuki Ito worked on Clockwork Knight games and so many more. And with this team, Sega would complete J-Force's vision in time for a 1996 release. That vision would see an experience that approximates the tabletop wargame in a new and innovative way, blending RPG mechanics and story with army building and a quest for continental domination, for all the right reasons of course, while adding a splash of fighting game influence. As you start the game, you're treated to a rather wonderful intro, which blends Western high fantasy themes with Japanese anime production. It's great at setting the scene of this idyllic kingdom that has been ravaged by vengeful gods in the centuries past. Now, the dark god Medruk has been sealed away just long enough for 8 chosen warriors to appear. You start the game by choosing one of these warriors, who each have ascended to the throne of their various kingdoms on the continent. Each has their own strengths and weaknesses, their own story, and their own cast of supporting characters. They also change how the game plays significantly, as well as the story beats. Quite simply, depending on your playstyle and desired difficulty level, there's a character for you, and the true master of the game will see through the campaign of every one of those 8 monarchs through repeated play. Not that all 8 are playable from the start, a few are only selectable after you've finished the main story with one of the starting characters. After an opening cinematic, you find yourself in the Kingdom's Court with a few options that we'll come into later but aren't very useful out of the gate. Once you're done there, you're off into the world of Legendra, and then you see the scale of the task at hand. You rule your kingdom from 1 or 2 small castles of dozens on the continent, and those others are ruled by your rival monarchs and other independent armies as all on the continent battle for supremacy. You direct your generals towards the first castle and watch as they travel across the land in search of your first conquest. Soon they're storming the castle and the battle sequence is initiated. And this is what you're interested in, isn't it? Battles play with one set of generals and their assigned troops fighting against the other. Up to 5 generals can be deployed when exploring or storming castles, but castles themselves can hold up to 10 generals, which can put attackers at a disadvantage. This is something that the CPU doesn't usually take advantage of, but as a player, it's absolutely something that you should. Each general can have an army made up of one of 10 troop types, ranging from the standard sword-wielding soldiers and cavalry, to samurais, to flying harpies and beastmen. In these early skirmishes, you have generals with between 10 and 30 troops, but as you play on, these numbers expand with up to 100 troops serving on the battlefield under each general. And yes, while it may seem quaint in a post-Dynasty Warriors or Total War world, having over 200 warriors battling on screen is impressive on this 30-year-old hardware, and it's still a spectacle. Add in the generals and their assorted magic attacks and it looks amazing. The Saturn's infinite planes are put to good use here, as you can see when you pan all the way out on the battlefield. The backgrounds manage multiple layers of parallax scrolling while the hordes of warriors and their generals fight on. The back of the US game case boasts that you can have up to 200 frenzied warriors, but the reality is more impressive than that, with the 2 generals on screen as well as whatever multi-sprite screen-filling magic attacks that they want to use in that battle. That's right, you can do more than just command your troops in battle. In fact, the strategies behind your troops are relatively high level. You have access to several formations depending on the generals on the field at the time, with a variety of commands. Each has its own strategic benefits. For example, playing defense not only strategically keeps your troops at the rear of your command to protect your general, but ups their defensive stats, while the other formations will offer strategic and/or stat buffs as well. Given how troop types play a game of rock, scissors or paper in terms of how effective they are against each other, there is no secret sauce to winning, and you will have to adapt based on the class of your own troops and who your enemy has in their ranks. Ultimately, you don't need to eliminate every soldier on the field. The goal is to defeat the general, and the battle doesn't end until their life bar is whittled down or they call a retreat. As such, the focus is always on defeating that general, and aside from your troops, you have access to the previously mentioned magic attacks. Your generals have what amounts to an MP gauge and an active time battle bar, and when that bar fills, you can cast a magic attack. These attacks range from targeting the enemy troops, buffing your own army, or attacking the rival general, and range from small purple knives tossed across the field to huge screen-filling explosions and meteor showers. Again, spectacular stuff. Generals can retreat at any time in the battle, whether they've lost substantial troops or not, though doing so eliminates them from the wider skirmish, while the winner can fight another round or will take the victory if there's no other generals left. If all the troops are depleted on both sides, generals can opt to duel or retreat. Duels pit the opposing leaders against one another like a 2D fighting game, albeit one where the attacks are fully automated and you can do nothing but watch with trepidation. While retreating will trigger a loss, depleting a general's life bar for you or the CPU will mean one of 3 things. Either the general is captured, whereby they can be rescued later, or will be forced to join the enemy. Or they'll be injured and they'll be out of commission for that army for the next 2 weeks. Lastly, they can be killed and lost to Dragon Force's equivalent of permadeath. Needless to say, with the danger of the third possibility, a tactical retreat is often the sensible option. All of these considerations add depth to the conflicts across the map. You can always engineer it so that when you siege a castle you have more generals, where their armies have more troops and you have the advantage in numbers, but it by no means guarantees victory if you have your tactics set up incorrectly. Once you've conquered an area and hold its castle, you raise the flag of your country, which is pretty cool and adds to the satisfaction of seeing Legendra overflow with your monarch standard. But the more castles you hold, the more you yourself will be under siege from rival kingdoms bandits and undead armies. Just as important as winning a castle is when and how to take them, plotting your advances across the map to ensure that you have the most protection from enemies by stationing generals at every castle. Held castles generate troops, which can then be recruited into armies. Now, I do find it quite amusing how agnostic these troops are. Sure, you can train to be a soldier, or an archer, or even a mage, but how do you say to young Quinton, the aspiring knight from Tristan, "You must become a dragon man, or a harpy"? In any case, to hold these castles, you need generals stationed there, and they will be beset by various enemies, in particular the endlessly respawning bandits that will continue to ravage your resources. It's all deep and fascinating stuff that sits behind a simple interface. That's the beauty of Dragon Force. It's simple and accessible, and light on the sort of micromanagement common to strategy games, but with levels of depth for players to get lost in. But it's not all left on the battlefield or the world map. Every week you return to court to deal with domestic matters. It's here that you can award generals with medals, which increases their troop capacity, and doing so keeps them happy, as unhappy generals can leave your burgeoning empire at a moment's notice. You can also change troop types, equip items, fortify castles, and interrogate your captives to turn them to your cause. Each general can be leveled up, have their stats bolstered, have degrees of satisfaction, and wield different weapons and items. This is where Dragon Force really feels more like an RPG than the strategy game, and that goes double for the dialogue and cutscenes throughout the game. The main campaign, as you look to take control of Legendra in order to seek out the 8 members of the Dragon Force to combat the resurrected Dark God, is amongst the most engaging I've played in this era of gaming. The satisfaction when toppling a kingdom, the constant pressure from rival forces, the engaging story, it's all utterly fantastic. It's not quite perfect though. The endgame sees you embarking on more linear excursions as you focus on the titular Dragon Force visiting shrines once Legendra has been conquered. You're then besieged relentlessly by respawning dragon armies which sap at your resources. The endgame is pretty epic though, with some satisfying final boss battles. And when you're done, you unlock the rest of the monarchs as playable characters and can embark on the campaign 7 more times, each story slightly different to the last. A huge experience that is very replayable. In the eyes of this old gamer, Dragon Force is not only one of the greatest Saturn games, but one of the best games ever made on any system. When I first owned the PAL version of this game in 1997, I played each campaign multiple times until I literally couldn't play it anymore. Trading it towards a Dreamcast in 1999 remains one of my biggest gaming regrets, as its significant cost on the second-hand market is extremely prohibitive. It was only with an ODE that I was able to enjoy this game once again. And I'll be honest, when I started this game again a few months ago, it wasn't just to make a video, it was to play it for fun. But when the game got its claws into me, it did so deeply that I just could not put it down. And even after rolling the credits again, I'm raring to go back. And that's why I had to share the details of this magical game with you now. Because Dragon Force is magical, straddling the lines of multiple genres and using numerous inspirations to create something unique. As an RTS, it's a simple one, but that easy to pick up nature belies a depth in other areas, whilst making a wider campaign that exciting and gratifying. It remains a stunning and unique experience, and one that demonstrates the 2D power of the Saturn. Hundreds of sprites, layers of parallax, infinite planes, it's absolutely glorious and gives a spectacle unlike any other 2D game. And it remains Saturn only in the West. Yes, there was a Japan only PS2 port, but the upscaled visuals look pretty horrendous to be honest. I mean, look at the castles on the map and the Vaseline smeared character portraits. And beyond PS2, that's it. So yes, Dragon Force remains best played on Saturn and is only available on the Saturn for non-Japanese speakers. There are a number of games that can claim to be the Sega Saturn's soul, but a game that is still best played and is still largely exclusive to the system, that makes exceptional use of its specific strengths and remains utterly compelling and unique to this day, is absolutely in contention for that title. Dragon Force is that game, and irrespective of platform, It's a game that I'd urge any player to try out. It's a shame in fact that it is Saturn exclusive, as it fully deserves to be enjoyed by gamers irrespective of platform today. If you get the chance on real hardware or emulated, you absolutely must try this out. If you play Dragon Force, we'd love to hear what you think, and get in touch via the comments below or via our Discord. If you've enjoyed the video, please give us a like or a subscribe and hit that bell for notifications to stay on top of all future Sega Guys content. And if you want to be extra mega, think about becoming a member for a bunch of extra content and perks from as little as 99 pence. But irrespective of any of that, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the Sega side.